All right, let's go. The Eagles vibes are lit and this thing's building. Plus, with the Jaguars right around the corner and the Eagles wearing their Kelly greens, why is this the perfect matchup for Jalen Hurts and the rest of the offense? And even though Philly's defense has played lights out, there's more changes coming for Vic Fangio's unit, with one of those being big play Zay getting a start due to the injury to Slay. So what can we expect there, and are the Jags a trap game? Let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? All right, this is pretty cool. I'm partnering with Underdog on a pretty sweet contest for you to have a chance to win any Eagles jersey of your choice. All you gotta do is hit the like button in this video, of course, obviously subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and then go to the comment section and enter the name of the individual you think will score the first touchdown in the game on Sunday, where if and when the Eagles win, I'll randomly select one lucky winner who predicted the first touchdown score to win any Eagles jersey of your choice. So feel free to swing by the live stream as well so we can sweat it out together and see if your pick hits. By the way, on the topic of live stream, we're going to be spinning to see who wins another 2 Eagles tickets to any game of your choice as well at halftime. Anyway, looking ahead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, there's so many things to like about this matchup. First off, obviously, the Kelly green jerseys will be unveiled for the first time this season. And remember, those bad boys are lucky, since Philly's never lost while wearing those fire kits.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
All right, fine. It's only been 2 games, but it's still 2 wins. However, more importantly, the Jags just play into nearly all of the Eagles' strengths. For example, Jacksonville has a negative 93.5 EPA as a pass defense, otherwise translated as god-awful and the worst pass defense in the league.
Yeah, very bad.
For the record, the next closest team is Carolina, but they're nearly 30 points better in terms of EPA. Plus, the biggest factor when it comes to the Birds is that the Jags play man coverage at the second highest rate in the league. And I don't have to tell you this, but that's a dream matchup for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. After all, they're some of the best when it comes to man coverage, which is also right in Jalen Hurts' wheelhouse as well. I'm telling you, the more film that I've watched of the Jacksonville defense makes this feel like an onslaught just waiting to happen. Because they rank second to last in opposing passer rating, passes given up over 20 yards, and are 30th in pass yards per attempt allowed. And unfortunately for them, they're going up against a quarterback who's been on fire the last couple weeks. I mean, since the bye week, Hurts has thrown for the second most yards per attempt right behind Jared Goff. So couple that with some atrocious plays from the Jags safeties, and I think QB1's going to have a day. And that is why I'm going with these 3 plays for Underdog. I'll take a Jalen Hurts over 210.5 passing yards, A.J. Brown over 79.5 receiving yards, and Trevor Lawrence to throw a pick. So feel free to tail that play. But since they are the official sponsor of the show, they're offering a special Philly special pick. As right now, all new customers can get a free Jalen Hurts pick when you sign up using my code PhillySpecial. Most of y'all know the drill already, but all you have to do is scan the QR code or use the link in the description and use my code PhillySpecial when you sign up, where you'll automatically get access to that giveaway as well as customizable tokens and discounts and even boosted payouts. Now, like I've said, I know those of you in Philly aren't able to do the pick'em games yet, but they do have the draft options open, whether you want to play in the NFL weekly leagues or get started in NBA action. I'm just saying, if you want to join the best option for fantasy sports, then scan that QR code or use the link in the description and use my code PhillySpecial to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Look, the Jalen Hurts pick feels like a given, because he just seems to be getting better in nearly every phase of the game. And really, as we're seeing Kellen Moore implement more of his offense, we're seeing there's nothing he can't do.
I don't think there's anything that I can't do. It's a matter of saturating myself in it and working at it. You have different voices telling you how to do it all the time. It's challenging naturally, but I can't say that I haven't figured it out at some point. That's a testament to the people around me, and that's a testament to the work that's put in. But, we're talking about all the things that we're doing now. Was I under center in college? Was that something that I've done? But, it seemed to be efficient. In 2021, we did it pretty well, and 2022 was a little bit of a different approach, but still efficient. And then 2023, last year, just had a lot of turnovers, but relatively good, production. And so it looks different, and we're a different team now. And I think that's what everyone really has to understand and accept, that we have a new team, we have another play caller that's different, and there's a new approach.
Not gonna lie, but he's got a great point. Because just about every time Jalen's been criticized, he's shown the ability to elevate his play. Obviously, a lot of that is due to his unmatched work ethic, but now the hope is he can continue his performance from what we saw in Cincinnati. That is, unless you're Greg Cosell.
Hurts is a good quarterback, but he's a certain kind of quarterback. He's not
He's not a pure anticipation quarterback. He's a see-it-throw-it quarterback. He's not a great progression reader, and coaches who've coached him will tell you that. I've had those conversations. So, what stood out last week, I thought, and I don't know if you got to see much of that game. I know you're obviously you do the Eagles in the preseason, but I thought their O-line was phenomenal. I charted a number of his throws, and he had 4+ seconds on a lot of his throws to sit in the pocket, and there was no one around him. So there was nothing to react to, because he does have a tendency to react to opposing jersey color. There was nothing to react to. And they let Fred Johnson, the left tackle replacing Mailata, block one-on-one versus Hendrickson on a number of deeper drops. Trey Hendrickson, who's a very good edge pass rusher, and Johnson did an outstanding job. I thought Hurts' best throw of the game was not the 45-yard touchdown to Smith, which was a great throw, throwing it up against the safety battle, who's not a good coverage player. But he hit Brown on 3rd and 16 for 17 yards, where the read was trips to the right. He did not like what he saw, and he came back left and stuck it on Brown on the curl route. I thought that was his best play and throw of the game.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Sorry, I've said it before, I respect Greg's knowledge of the game, the breakdowns, film reviews, everything else. However, those types of comments just seem like he's got an agenda out for Hurts, especially when you look at a couple other very credible film breakdowns, like the QB School, for example, and then hear this take on the exact same game.
Jalen Hurts, Week 8, excellent win. Thought he played very well on a number of different levels. Really loved how he played with anticipation. I really loved the pass protection. Certainly some defensive issues for the Bengals, but Jalen Hurts playing at a high level, playing with great anticipation, lots of accuracy, lots of big play chunks. Looks like he's moving really well as far as when he takes off to run, the quarterback run game, all those things together. The Eagles look like they're rolling.
I don't know, maybe it's the way his take was delivered, but whenever I hear one guy praising him for anticipation and the other guy knocking it, it's a little bit strange. But who knows, maybe it's Cosell triggering me by how he talked about QB1.
It's my quarterback.
Look, Jalen does need to keep it up. I'm not saying that he's reached the top of the mountain, but, I would have appreciated a little bit more praise for that game. Maybe I'm crazy, y'all let me know in the comments, but what were your takeaways about the Jalen debate? Also, despite Jacksonville not being near the Eagles' level on paper, what are your thoughts about this one being a trap game? Like Bill Colarulo brought up, the Eagles are coming off 3 straight wins, back-to-back road blowout wins at that, now an inferior opponent. And oh yeah, next week is Dallas week, where the Birds have gone 1-4 right before the game in Dallas the last 5 years.
I'm worried.
I understand a little cautious optimism setting in, but this team is clearly a different one from last season, so I think they're focused enough to take care of business.
Hanging out with each other, being around each other more and more, and just having that love for one another, and then just to talk about what is it about. It's about winning, and that's the only thing that matters. And most importantly, be happy for your teammates, because we all doing it together, and it takes all of us.
I've said it a million times since the last game, but the vibes are different. And to AJ's point, it does take all the fellas, like Fred Johnson, for example, who will get the start at left tackle again since Jordan Mailata is still on the IR with a hamstring injury. And he did a phenomenal job limiting Trey Hendrickson last week. However, he won't get any breather this week against Jacksonville's Josh Hines-Allen, with a former first-round pick ranking 8th in pressures this season while continually being a focus for opposing teams. But like we've seen, the Birds continue to ask a lot of Fred and aren't going to help much. So that'll definitely be one of the top matchups to watch. And seeing that Jalen Hurts ranks first in the NFL in play action this season, I think the squad should be fine if they continue to utilize that to help the pass protection versus the Jags. By the way, yes, I realize Travon Walker can be an absolute game wrecker, but, seeing that Lane Johnson's matched up against him, I'm not too worried about that one. Now, on the other hand, Philly has a fantastic opportunity to get to Trevor Lawrence and throw off his timing, which is why I went with the Lawrence interception for my pick. Because even though T-Law's protection has actually been in the upper half of the league this season, while also utilizing quick game and screens to offset the rush, the Jags are banged up and in a bad way on offense. In case you weren't aware, wide receiver Christian Kirk is out for the season with a broken collarbone. And then when you look at their injury reports, starting receivers Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis have been limited dealing with chest and shoulder injuries. Of course, I should mention that both players have gotten in some work in practice, so despite Doug Pederson calling them game time decisions, I'd fully expect them to play. But they definitely won't be 100%. Anyway, I know the statement of make the opposing offense one-dimensional is kind of a given, but it really applies this week. Because maybe Trevor Etienne comes back and maybe he doesn't, but it's Jacksonville's Tank Bigsby the Eagles need to shut down, with a second-year player absolutely dominating the competition to the tune of 5.8 yards per carry this season. Seriously, if you take a look at running back yards after contact and missed tackles forced per carry, Bigsby is literally the best in the NFL at that. Heck, he's nearly a yard more than the highest running back in terms of yards after contact with 4.26. So I agree with Sirianni about the identity of this team, but it's definitely going to get tested.
The identity of this football team is physical, and that's what we're going to try to play by each week is physical.
I'm telling you, if the Eagles do that, then I think we're fine. You attack the average offensive line and force Trevor Lawrence to beat you throwing the football, where Coop and Q can hopefully hang on to the interception and get us the win. Although if they don't, considering that Darius Slay was a DNP all week at practice with a groin injury, Isaiah Rodgers could be in line to follow up his big play Zay performance from last week. As Zay told Zack Baun that he's hoping to perform for the team and front office this week while making a lot of plays, since he said he wants to find a way to be in Philly for the rest of his career. And look, nobody wishes injuries on anybody, but the fact that Slay is out this week, potentially a couple weeks, Zay has a perfect opportunity to make some plays and really cement his status here in Philly. Maybe I'm biased, but Zay did say that his hopes are to get NFC Defensive Player of the Week, so just saying, maybe there's something to that. Plus remember, Vic Fangio's defenses have historically gotten better as the season goes on, so it should be the perfect opportunity for at least one, if not multiple turnovers, because this thing is building.
The first couple weeks, there was some things we needed to work on in the run game. Then it was the pass game. Then it was tackling was an issue. But the sign of a good defense is when you can clean up things and not make the same mistakes. It's a big playbook, and there's not nearly enough time to install stuff. So we're even installing new stuff every week. So it's constantly developing, and we're learning all the time.
That right there is the exact reason I've been saying this defense is going to continue to improve this year. As if it wasn't hard enough already for teams to prep and plan for Philly each week, it'll be something different. But more importantly, it'll be something the unit runs confidently because of the time with Fangio. Also, speaking of running, just because the Jags are terrible against the pass doesn't mean we won't see a heavy dose of Saquon in the ground game. I mean, let's not forget that Brian Baldinger shared that a couple members were tired of the offense and demanded change, to which Lane Johnson spoke a bit more on that.
During the bye week and coming back to what was our identity, and we hadn't established that, so if I had to compare it to anything, I would compare it to maybe 2021 when we played Detroit. And, we had a similar kind of offensive attack the first few weeks when we played Detroit and ran lots of run plays, lots of play actions, and it worked out really well for us. So I feel like it's more of the same formula. And, when you're able to do that, you're able to lessen the pass rush. You're able to put backers into positions where they have to play the run or the pass. And so instead of being, kind of one-dimensional, so I think it's helped from that standpoint.
Was it a player-led movement?
Yeah. I mean, it's really an offensive-led movement. I mean, we knew we had to make some adjustments. Some of the guys, some of the leaders, veterans on the O-line, we had our fair share of talks in helping it. So we just want the offense to be the best version of itself and win some games and hopefully score some points in the first quarter.
Yeah. So how does that work? Do you guys go as a group to present it to Nick, or does it go?
No, it's really when we have offensive meetings and the whole unit's in there, we kind of collaborate, and it's not all like we're in our separate meetings. It's really in one meeting room. So I thought it's gone well. We played well the past few weeks. Formula's gone well, but we have to be prepared to adapt. If the teams want to load the box and make us go another route, we will. So we're used to that too.
The beauty is that versatility now, because it's not telegraphed anymore. So for all those reasons that I mentioned, I'm confident in an Eagles win. But let's hear those score predictions. What are y'all going with? Also, on the topic of predictions, I had NFL analyst Anthony DeBona on to talk about the trade deadline approach, potential Eagles moves, and everything else around the Birds. Ryan with a 5, I'm getting through some of these super chats as well, said, I'd like to see Gainwell extended for the right price, but extend Zack Baun and Isaiah Rodgers ASAP. I mean, after what we've seen, we talked about it before, but it's like it seems like a foregone conclusion. You have to make that move, at least for Baun.
For Zack Baun, I feel like before they should even think about making any trades, I feel like you need to lock that guy up, because it seems like he's kind of been like the hidden treasure that they found this offseason, where when he signed, we were initially talking about he might be the Andrew Van Ginkel role. And sure enough, he's developed into arguably one of the best inside linebackers in the NFL this season. And he's kind of like the key cog that makes Vic Fangio's defensive front work because of what he can do. And he can line up as just inside linebacker, then they'll put him on the edge, and it kind of gives you the luxury to kind of give these different pre-snap looks and whatnot. So he's been a huge piece of their defense and the turnaround that they've had.
I'll tell you what, we've done lots of recordings, lots of talking and discussion on the air live, as well as behind the scenes and texting and everything else. And it's like some good, some bad. We've had some ups and downs, obviously, throughout the season. Felt like you kind of turn a corner, you build some momentum off of this one, but the Bengals game, I mean, there's so many wins. It might be Zack Baun because, the Eagles had 2 linebackers as the highest graded based on PFF gradings, but still the highest graded in the league. I don't think I ever would have expected to see that from Eagles linebackers, even for 1 week. But what was your Can you narrow it down to like biggest takeaway, or even like maybe top 3 takeaways for the Eagles-Bengals game and the positives there?
So I've got like 3 in mind, and I'm not going to really give the linebackers that praise right now. I mean, obviously they're playing at an elite level, and it's a crazy time in Philadelphia, because it felt like years ago, like for the last 10, 20 years, that like linebacker and cornerback were such big issues for the Eagles, and now it's like they're strong points on this defense. So that's kind of crazy. But first off, I feel like you have to mention the 2 young cornerbacks in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper Dejean, especially Cooper Dejean, because just it seems like ever since he's been inserted into that starting nickel like role, that the entire defense looks drastically different. I mean, the communication has been better. They've been more physical, and just that tackle for loss on Jamar Chase kind of summed it all up. Where just like it was such a statement play, and it just seems like such like a drastic difference between him and then when Devontae Maddox was in there. So I feel like those 2, and then obviously Quinyon Mitchell, he continues to just shut down whatever receivers put in front of him, Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors, and now the receivers that he faced, Jamar Chase and whoever else. But it's just like he keeps passing all the tests with flying colors, and it just seems like there's such a good foundation set in place now in Philadelphia secondary. And then moving on, I feel like you have to shout out your boy, Nolan Smith. I mean, he was kind of quiet those first couple of weeks, and people were like, oh, he's a bust. This is who they took him over, blah, blah, blah. And then sure enough, last 3 games, he's been arguably he's clearly their best pass rusher the last couple of games, and he's ranked up there with the best in the league over the last couple of games. So 2.5 sacks in his last 3 games, and maybe he should have had a full sack against them as well. But I mean, the steps that he's taking has kind of helped the defense move forward. And then lastly, I mean, you have to mention Jalen Hurts. I've been one of his bigger critics as far as early in the season saying that it looked like he regressed, and there were questions about if he can kind of keep it up and stop the turnover problems. But he's been on absolute fire since the bye week, and his best game came against the Bengals, where it looked like he was kind of returning to that MVP form that we saw in 2022. So the Eagles are moving in the right direction, and it seems like they're going to take advantage of a relatively easy schedule moving forward too.
Man, I will tell you what, yeah, you look at the schedule and how this thing shakes up and everything else. We will be at the Commanders game, obviously. So could be, I mean, legit chance, obviously, against Jacksonville, which we can talk about in a little bit, as well as, Dallas. And then you go to our home game versus the Commanders. But, we'll see. Can the Commanders keep winning? Does it require another Hail Mary of sorts? That was ridiculous. But nonetheless, I mean, the Eagles, like you say, they have some momentum. Things are looking positive. You have the schedule, the right time. And if you just keep building on that, again, if Jalen Hurts is playing at that level, it's an MVP type of conversation, not turning the football over. He looked aggressive and decisive for me was maybe the couple biggest things there, because it's like, instead of in the past, we're seeing like, oh man, he's kind of scared or timid or however we want to phrase that. Or beforehand, it was too loose with the football because he was turning it over. It's like he found that happy medium of like, okay, I know where to go with the football. And, we talk about all the time, like his work ethic and everything else there. And it's like Sirianni saying, yeah, but he had a good practice. He was trying to correct his mistakes. So whether it was looking on the film and going, man, I'm missing throws over the middle. It is open. I should take advantage of it. But something clicked against the Bengals defense, and he ran whenever he needed to. He played more aggressively. I saw some comments saying like, yeah, but I don't want him to get hurt. And it's like, I get that, but he kind of comes with the territory of Jalen. Like Jalen Hurts is at his best when he is that dual threat, like a smart dual threat quarterback, but still take advantage and make the defense pay whenever he's running. And you're right. If he's playing at this level, like I don't see why they can't be contenders. We had comments earlier of saying like, sure, there's Detroit, but I mean, is there any other NFC team that you feel, at least like not like way above the Eagles, but is there any other NFC team besides Detroit right now that rivals the Eagles, or based on just looking at how they played so far?
I mean, I feel like you still can't write off the 49ers. I know they're dealing with a bunch of injuries, but assuming they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back healthy here, possibly after the bye week, and I know Brandon Ayuk's not going to be returning, but maybe they make a trade for a receiver. Ricky Pearsall kind of looked pretty good this week's game as well. Mm-hmm. So and they still have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. Their defense is still solid and getting healthier. So I feel like you still have to put them in that argument, especially after what happened last year in the regular season when they visited Philadelphia. That obviously kind of left a stain on the Eagles. So I think but regardless, I feel like you have to view the Eagles right now as a top 3 team in the NFC, and it would be disappointing if they didn't make kind of a deep postseason run as well at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, you mentioned Pearsall. It is, as much as we may not like the 49ers, the story of the gunshot wound and returning it, like I really did love to see him out there and making plays, because we talked about him draft and everything, like, oh, it'd be cool if the Eagles got him and, the impact that he could have. But just as a human being, like, to go through that, overcoming adversity and seeing him out there, like, kudos to him. That was actually good to see. Donovan with the 5, appreciate that. Some of these super chats here says, "What's up, Josh? The game was electric," which obviously being in Cincinnati. Been a lot of fun talking S here in Cincy. They're tired of hearing "Go Birds, let's catch a game in Philly." Okay, well, hey, we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be at the Commanders game, so you want to swing by for that one, let me know. But there's a potential of trying to make another one happen, so we'll see later on in the year if we can do that. But I don't know, maybe even. I won't totally write it off, but or out of question. But maybe a playoff game. We'll see if we can make something work. Playoffs. Yeah. Hey, an NFC. Could we host the NFC Championship game? It's a long way to go. Really long way to go. I get that.
Slow down.
Maybe pump the brakes, but it's not impossible. And I feel much better, obviously, coming away from the Bengals game. So. Can we get one thing to let me, I guess, get Albert's real quick, and then I'll ask you this. But the 5 from Albert said, send Bradbury, Huff, and Pickens to the Raiders, plus and Pickens, maybe, I don't know what are we sending? And Pickens to the
Kenny
Raiders.
Pickett, I'm assuming?
Maybe, yeah, I was going to say Pickens, that doesn't make sense. So maybe Pickett to the Raiders, plus a 1st and 2nd for Crosby and Minshew. I don't know if that...
No.
You
can turn Madden off now. That's not happening.
If they would do that, fantastic. We can dream. It's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. But the question that I was going to ask, though, is with this squad beating Cincinnati beforehand, I get the whole like, oh, they only beat the Giants, they only beat the Browns. Like, we would just kind of write that off. Sure, they played better, especially the Giants, but sure, they played better. Started to see some things, but not the best offenses. Everyone understands that. So there's excuses, and that's fine. But Cincinnati, a hungry team, a team that historically plays very well at this time, even despite their shaky starts early in the season. Joe Burrow at home, since he had not won at home this year so far. Like, a lot of reasons to be like, look out. The Bengals were favored based on the spread. The Bengals were favored in the game for a reason. So all those things considered. Now, they were without T. Higgins. But it's fascinating how so quickly it can be the Eagles are a fluke and they didn't play that well and they're just lucky, to then beat the Bengals, who everyone prior to this game were going, oh, the Bengals are good, they're a good team, they're going to beat the Eagles, they're going to put them in a place. And then the Eagles win by 20 and it immediately becomes, well, but T. Higgins was out. It's like, can there be some sort of like consistency with this? Because the Eagles were without starters as well.
No, I mean, you just looking back even to we've had people bringing up like, oh, they beat the Saints early in the season. Like, that was a good win against a terrible team. But at that point, people were ready to praise Clint Kubiak as the next Sean McVay. And they were like looking like they were going to just go 17-0 and score 40 points a game. But then the Eagles beat them, and now Derek Carr's hurt and they've lost however many games in a row. And now it's like, oh, the Saints were terrible. Like, people don't put these games into perspective. Granted, the Browns and the Giants, like you said, are 2 bad teams that were still bad at that time. But the Bengals, even without T. Higgins, Joe Burrow was playing out of his mind, and he was putting up great numbers this year. And the fact that they kind of held him in check to just outside of that first drive, he really didn't do much if you put it into perspective. And they still had Jamar Chase, who was their best player. They still had both their running backs. Their offensive line was relatively healthy. Their other receivers were there. So, and it's not like the Eagles were fully healthy either. They were missing 2 stars along the offensive line. They were missing Dallas Goedert. So if it was a fully healthy Eagles team at home against a banged up Bengals team, then sure, you can say, like, you use those excuses. But they went on the road in a place that they haven't really won in forever and got the job done in a convincing fashion. I feel like no matter what happens, people are just going to look to discredit the Eagles just because either they don't like the tush push or they don't like Nick Sirianni, they don't like Jalen Hurts' quotes or whatever. Like, there's always going to be excuses. But if you just look back and not be biased and just look at it like as a whole, I feel like you have to give this team credit for the way that they've responded since the bye week and kind of the role that they're on now. And moving forward, there's going to be more of those same things, because now if they beat the Jaguars, people are going to say, oh, well, they don't have Christian Kirk and potentially Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis. They just traded their left tackle. Like, there's going to be excuses no matter what. So that's why I said, like, coming out of the bye week, I was like, they just need to win. And it doesn't matter necessarily how it looks or how pretty it is, but just win, and then eventually all these stories we put to bed later on in the season, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Very much so, which I don't know what it'll take necessarily to get there, because and we've mentioned this a couple different times, but it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like as soon as they win, then it's immediate like, well, but they have the superstar roster, right? Even with some injury, but they still have the superstar roster. But then if they lose, then obviously you go, well, but they have a superstar roster. They should not be losing these games. So it doesn't help Jalen.
Just look at after the Giants game when they were like, oh, Jalen Hurts can't execute basic concepts. Like they're just creating narratives to just like try and boost themselves up. Or these are well-respected people. I mean, Greg Cosell or whoever you want to look at, these are guys that actually watch the film. But then to say stuff like that, it just kind of discredits all the work that you have put in over the years, because it's just like, no, he just made a mistake or two here and there. It's not like it's been like this the whole time. And he's playing much better football. He's not turning the ball over. People were mad that he kind of took that dive. I don't know if it was against the Giants or the Browns. I forget, where he was about to be sacked, but he kind of just dropped down.
For sure, just
like
went right down.
Manning. Yeah, and I feel like that's a good sign to me, because given his ball security issues that he's had in the past, or people saying that he's taking too many hits, the fact that he kind of just went down and gave up the play, lived to see another down, I feel like that's kind of a good step in the right direction. So, but yeah, like you said, it's just going to be always a problem and always a narrative that's going to be created around the Eagles.
Unfortunately, but 6 for 6, I believe, throwing over the middle. That's a very positive sign. 6 for 6, perfect passer rating. 6 for 7 in play action. Things that we had not seen before, and it's like there's two parts to it, right? So like Brett Coleman had posted a couple different tweets saying like the Eagles are enlightened and they're starting to do things that scare me in a good way for the Eagles, but scare the rest of the league. And he's talked about a number of times, which obviously, all the film breakdowns and everything else, but knowing Kellen Moore's offense very closely. And so he did videos last year of like the Eagles run this high school offense, and here's what Kellen Moore brings to the Eagles offense, like all these other things. And we talked tons of different recordings and videos and everything else of like, here's what we hope to see. Will we get some play action? Will we see some under center? Obviously, training camp comes along, preseason, and there's some hope, there's some promise there. Then it's been this very, slow downhill, dissension, I guess, or not a good promising sign, because it's like, oh, we saw some in week 1 and then it got worse. And I know there were some injuries and you can't run full offenses and everything else, but it was to an extreme. But from this game, a big takeaway is obviously like the Eagles did a lot more of a Kellen Moore offense. And I know we can't ever know for sure, like, oh, what exact percentage is Sirianni calling plays? But you, without a doubt, can go back and look historically at what does Kellen Moore offenses look like, what does Sirianni offenses look like, and know that the bulk of the plays that were run was Kellen Moore's system, scheme, play calling, and Jalen Hurts executing it at a very high level. So to me, that was probably the biggest takeaway and the biggest promise. And, again, then the extra proof is in the pudding, so to speak, is like, well, yeah, and he played so well. Like he played one of the best games that he has, certainly since 2022, but even in his entire career.
It applies to not only the offense, but the defense as well, that you could just see that as the weeks go on, it's just these are new coordinators and they're getting more and more comfortable. Not only are the coordinators getting more comfortable with the players, but the players are obviously getting more comfortable with the system as well. So, but the offense, like you said, the fact that we saw play action from under center, play action from the pistol, play action from shotgun. The only kind of negative that I had from the game is that they should kind of throw away those screen passes and those swing passes that they were just, it felt like it was just like a tackle for loss every time.
Yeah.
Those got to go. I guess you want to stretch the field that way, I guess, and keep the defense kind of honest. But at the same time, it just seemed like a wasted play every time. So that's my only criticism regarding the offense so far. But like you said, we're never going to know exactly how much of it is Kellen Moore, but you can kind of tell after watching kind of a Nick Sirianni offense for 3 or 4 years now that you can tell like, oh, when they go empty and it's just verticals or whatever, like you could tell these certain looks just scream Nick Sirianni, where there's a lack of like movement before the snap, and then there's a lack of like route creativity after the snap in terms of where the players are lining up and if they're running across the middle. So clearly it seems like as the season progresses and coming out of the bye week that Kellen Moore is having more of an influence and the offense is flourishing because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not like you've got Kellen Moore, who does like to run play action, who does like to run outside zone, who does like to be under center, all these other areas, who does like to attack over the middle of the field. And Nick Sirianni, who's not historically, and then just be like, oh, no, but that's Nick Sirianni. We just so drastically changed it. And Kellen Moore had no input either, by the way. So it's like, yeah, we can put 2 and 2 together. It's just a positive because we are starting to see that change. And even Hurts talked about it. He's like, yeah, under center helps us. We want to impose ourselves. We want to be a successful offense. He's like, I'm confident in it. I'm pushing it. I want to go that route. So you can even hear him too. And he's just got different vibes about him this year. I love the way that he's presenting himself in front of the media, in front of the public, but also you see him on the sidelines. More importantly, he's having some fun. You're starting to see more of that confidence in building this offense. So all around, it's a lot of positive. Bald Eagle with a 2 here said Davis, Gainwell, and a 4th for Myles Garrett. Sure, yeah. Once again, we're playing Madden. It sounds like everyone said yes to that, but
I'm not one to put percentages on things anymore. I've retired from that business, but
no more.
I feel pretty confident, like in saying that Myles Garrett and Max Crosby are not coming to Philadelphia. So I would kind of temper your expectations as far as like a trade deadline move in that regard. I feel like we've kind of seen Howie Roseman make small trades here and there at the trade deadline, but he usually saves the massive deals for the offseason.
Yeah, and you mentioned you had a great article as well recently of the trade deadline moves and historic success or not success and where that's gone. So, I don't know that necessarily that we want to go that route. And even Vic Fangio, he said for his defense in the presser today, basically asked, do you want to move? Do you expect to move? And just no, like nothing. That was good enough for him. Nope. And then obviously they want more clarification. So eventually he shared more. But I was like, that's great. I love that.
It's the best. Like going from a Nick Sirianni press conference where he just like takes accountability for everything, whether was his fault or it's not his fault. And then you have like Vic Fangio, who's just brutally honest. And he's like, oh, this guy didn't play good. No, I don't want that to happen. No, I don't want Cooper Dejean returning punts. Like he doesn't care. He's at that point where he's like got 1 foot out the door. He's like that old retired guy at your job. It's just like, what are they going to do? Fire me? I'll get my papers in my back pocket. Like,
yep.
I feel like you do that all the time. So just Vic Fangio, just unfiltered, and it's just very refreshing to watch his press conferences.
That's great. Yeah, you're right. Because he's been around so long. He doesn't care. Like when he makes the comment about Cooper Dejean, he's like, he knows he's been around long enough, so he's got to know this is going to happen. But like when he made the comment about Cooper Dejean not returning punts, then Michael Clay comes in either right after him or maybe Kellen Moore was the coordinator and then Michael Clay. But it kind of took Clay back, it looked like, whenever that press conference happened, because like, hey, Fangio said that he doesn't want Cooper Dejean back there. Have you thought about blah, blah, blah? And then, Clay's got to sit there and go, he's got to process that and think, oh, man, like Vic said this to you. So like I got to have some sort of response and be like, well, yeah, like we don't want guys getting hurt, but, we have versatility and blah, blah. That's why we have so many. So he gave the PC answer, but I'm sure that he's thinking like, okay, well, every once in a while, you might be surprised with a Vic Fangio honesty take and then have to answer to the media whenever they follow up with a question like that.
He was probably thinking like, wait, you already took Britton Covey away from me. He got hurt. And now Cooper Dejean, you're going to take him away from me? Like, what am I? I'm losing all my good punt returners. What's going on?
Yeah. You don't want to lose those. Oddly enough, though, and I getting caught up in the emotions of the game, which, by the way, I'm going to get to these other super chats, too, and run through those. But the oddity was that the Eagles never forced a punt. And I didn't realize that until I was going back through and looking at the game recap. And I was like, oh, dang, it's like the defense played really good. But the reason was just turnover on downs or end of halves or end of game situation. There wasn't an actual punt, and then turnovers, obviously, too. So we never even got to know for sure if it would have been an Aya Smith or Cooper Dejean back. I feel like it would have been Cooper Dejean probably. Even the statements recently, you don't know for sure yet if Aya Smith's going to get there because I think Clay said he wants to get Aya Smith like fully comfortable in that role before they make a 100% transition. But still, we won't ever know because they didn't have a punt yet. This is different than the 49ers game last year where there was no forced punt and we got obliterated. We didn't force a punt because you got a turnover on downs and 2 other turnovers and an end of half. And so it was great. It was fantastic.
For all the right reasons, not allowing 30, 40 points in a game.
Yeah, not like 5 straight possessions with 5 straight touchdowns and, game over. So Flipping the Bird with a 2 said Bradbury in a 2025 6th to Houston for Dameon Pierce. This is a comment they had earlier as well, but questions or considerations on potential there.
That's a bit more realistic, I guess, but I don't know who's really trading for James Bradbury at this point, but you never know.
That's true. Do you think that, should they use a guy like a Dameon Pierce?
They could, I think, but then again, I feel like Kenneth Gainwell, I know people just don't like him for some reason. They just hate whenever he touches the ball, but he's actually played pretty well this season. I feel like Saquon Barkley kind of talked about how he's like sneaky, like strong because he sees him in practice, but then like other defenders don't think he's as strong as he is because of his size. But I feel like, yeah, he's in a contract year, so you kind of have to think about your options moving forward. But then again, you see what Will Shipley did with his one carry before it was like brought back, and I feel like Nick Gates kind of owes him dinner or something for that, because that was a good run. That was like
that was big time.
Crazy. It was a physical run. He finished it in the end zone. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better run from him there. But
and we would have put a 40 spot. It would have been It'd been 40, 42 at that point, or 41, I guess, if the 7, because it was 34 at that point, I think. So yeah, but
yeah. So I feel like that kind of sucked that was erased off the board for him. But I feel like they kind of know, like they knew coming into the season that they needed a long-term running back 2 behind Saquon Barkley. So that's kind of where Will Shipley will step in. But I feel like they're probably comfortable with Gainwell moving forward. I don't know if they necessarily have to make a move for a running back. There's other spots where they can make a move kind of in regards to depth, but I don't really think running back's that area.
Yeah, I like the morale, and I hear everyone, because again, it's like, look, it's the trade deadline. It'll be, to me, more surprising if Howie does not make a move, only because Howie is who Howie is, and he's constantly trying to just nitpick, fine-tune, get like little tiny moves to say, well, this guy may not play hardly any snaps at all, but maybe there's some depth there. Maybe there's a reason to make this type of trade. So I still feel like there might be some sort of acquisition, but nothing to the magnitude of big blockbusters. You know, it's like Flipping the Bird, another 2 says Slay Pickett 2025 second and a 4th 2026 first for Crosby, as there's another Max Crosby take in here. But I can't see one of those bigger types of moves. Do you feel like we'll at least get some, like even if it's small, do you feel like there will be any type of trade that Howie Roseman does before the deadline?
Yeah, I feel like you might see him kind of in a similar way to like the Jahan Dotson trade. I mean, not necessarily a player that is going to be playing like a key role in offense like Dotson is, although the production hasn't been there. But in terms of like a younger player that may have disappointed elsewhere, but now he still has another season remaining on his rookie deal, and the Eagles can kind of almost redshirt him for the second half of the season and then have them as like a role player moving forward into 2025. So something like that, or maybe just a marginal upgrade along like depth at certain positions along the edge or at tight end. We talked about Greg Dulcich the last recording that we did, the Broncos tight end. I mean, Browns edge defender Zadarius Smith is still a name that's been out there, but it seems like maybe the Lions are looking at him, or maybe a team that kind of really needs a starter is going to go in that direction. A couple other names that I wrote down here. Patriots wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, if they do want to add another receiver in case they're not happy with Jahan Dotson or whatever. I mean, he's a player that was linked to the Eagles before he signed with the Patriots, so maybe they kind of revisit that. And then speaking of the Raiders, I know it's not Max Crosby, but Divine Diablo, linebacker for the Raiders, is kind of one of the better pass rushing inside linebackers that's out there. He has just 1 year left on his deal, so it would kind of just be like a rental, but I think he kind of fits that mold in terms of what Vic Fangio looks for in a linebacker, and he'd probably be available for like a 2026 7th round pick or 6th round pick or a swap, which seems to be like all the hype right now. They like teams love swapping these late picks, so something like that. And then if the Eagles are able to kind of beat the Jaguars and really end their season, then their safety Andre Sisco is another guy that the Eagles had interest in prior to the draft. Granted, he's not the greatest safety in coverage, but he can kind of play that dime role where I think that would help and kind of add depth as far as safety goes moving forward as well. So those are the kind of guys that I know it's not the most exciting names or plays that you'll love to hear about, but I think that those are more realistic options for the Eagles at the trade deadline this year.
Yeah, I like those. Definitely a couple of different moves, and I agree. Like you say, there's not it doesn't feel like as big of a blockbuster type move, but if you're going to still get someone to push you over the edge in case there's injuries, Eagles so far have been relatively healthy. We've had some guys out, obviously, with some starters and everything else, but the depth of this team too. I mean, even just coming into the season, it feels totally different because you have a guy like Jordan Mailata go down, and massive kudos to Fred Johnson for the play that he had, limiting Trey Hendrickson. Mekhi Becton goes down. Tyler Steen's able to step up. Dallas Goedert goes down. Grant Calcaterra had some better blocking. We still don't necessarily want him to block much, but in terms of receiving, hey, he's been phenomenal. He's been really good. So you add in just another depth position or a depth acquisition beforehand, I would totally be supportive of that, and I feel like it will be something of a smaller magnitude. But we'll see. It'll be interesting because Howie continues to make moves, and I will mention very briefly, we will not stay on this topic for very long, but Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle, the underrated Baylor Philly Bear, is officially no longer a Philadelphia Eagle after like 2 days, 3 days.
The guy went from being in a thumbnail on the Philly special to being cut in less than a week. I mean, can we just have a moment of silence for
we probably
Lawson?
Should. Yes. Siaki, man, good luck to you. Well wishes. Hopefully you can get picked up somewhere and shine eventually.
Or it might be a Howie Roseman special and he's back on the practice squad tomorrow and they're just trying to pay other people the same amount.
Yeah, so it's a Paris
Campbell. He might just be put up in a hotel. He might be in Jalen Hurts' room somewhere in his house, and then they're just going to bring him back tomorrow. Stay in Philadelphia.
Don't leave town.
We're gonna assign somebody else real quick, and then you'll be back on the practice squad on Thursday or something like that.
See, here's what it is. It's actually the Philly special curse because he was on the thumbnail, and then he gets shipped off, and then Josh Uche was on the thumbnail the following video, and he immediately gets traded to the Chiefs. So I've got Azeez Ojulari in this thumbnail because someone was like, hey, what do you think about Azeez Ojulari? And I'm like, sure, but I don't think that's realistic. But there's a lot of people like, oh, we got to go to like a mid-tier pass rusher, not a Max Crosby, or a Myles Garrett. But maybe if the Giants, because the Giants are, I don't know what they were doing last night, but who knows where they're going. Maybe.
You didn't like that 2-point conversion?
Not necessarily. No, I think I was feeling like Daniel Jones was after that play. Like, what on earth are we calling here? I don't know, but because I put him on the thumbnail, he will not be added by the Eagles for sure. He'll go to some other team.
I mentioned him, Azeez Ojulari, in my article last week, the mailbag, when I was talking about potential trade candidates. Mm-hmm. I feel like he would be a phenomenal fit. Like, he was right behind Josh Uche as far as like edge rushers that make a lot of sense as far as having kind of a little bit of coverage experience, but also a ton of upside as a pass rusher while also being young. But then again, it's kind of a rental, so who knows? But it seems like what the Giants really should do is sign him and Darius Slayton to extensions because they've kind of been two of the players that were the only promising players this year as far as guys that are going to be free agents. But given their questionable GM decisions over the last couple of years, they might just end up trading them at the deadline. So if they are available, I feel like the Eagles should take advantage of Azeez Ojulari if he's there.
I would definitely be in favor of that one. And again, you look at teams that if they are selling or if they're finally ready to make a different move, make an organizational shift, decide that we are maybe going to clean house and just start this thing completely over because of where it's headed. Who knows? But it's also a division rival, so they perhaps would be like, we'll look at other deals. We can get some other deals from some other teams. Even if it's a little bit worse, we might trade them off to some other, but Oz here with a 2 says Nick Sirianni out of the kitchen, more under center. That is also true. There was a tweet here not too long ago, actually, from Brian Baldinger, who was breaking down the uses of play action passes, helping the rhythm and timing of the throws. And then, there's a commenter from an individual asking any idea why it took him 8 weeks to do this. And then Brian or Baldy responded saying a few guys were tired of the offense and spoke up, which is very interesting because he's really close with Lane Johnson. So the natural inclination would to say, well, that might be probably Lane as one of those. But regardless, getting some inside information from Baldy there, we all love it, yes, because Sirianni is out of the kitchen more. We saw very big differences in this Bengals game, and hopefully it leads to more of that. But I guess if anything, it speaks to the leadership of this team and seeing like, look, we've got a squad, we've got playmakers, we've got ability on this team, and something with the coaching, whether it was Sirianni or we can insert whoever it was, but they have a type of meeting of sorts and say, look, we need to change this. And even if we don't agree, we don't like Sirianni, there's a lot of criticism that has gone around. If there's one thing that I could say, at least, and maybe it's just to save his job, but at least he's been willing, even if it's a little bit late, but been willing to say, all right, I'm going to finally maybe give this thing off a little bit more. Maybe I'm going to step back and be even less involved with the offense. And if it continues in that route, like we were saying earlier, then it's a positive. But certainly interesting that the players had a coup of sorts and changed things up.
Nick Sirianni is kind of like the anti-Doug Pederson in that regard, where like the ownership approached like Doug Pederson. I mean, granted, he won a Super Bowl, but they were like, hey, you got to make these changes to your coaching staff, or this guy's got to call plays. And Doug Pederson was like, nope. And it eventually led to him being fired. And Nick Sirianni is kind of like, hey, you tell me who's in the coaching staff and I'll figure it out. So like, it's like the complete opposite. And it seems like he's almost like to a fault. He's almost like too willing to accept blame for things that aren't necessarily his fault. And that gets him killed by the media and things like that. But it seems like so far The players are liking him. Jalen Hurts has said more positive things about Nick Sirianni this year than he ever has. So I feel like that's a good thing to look at as well. And like you said, they're willing. The fact that they're willing to make changes is positive because there are so many play callers around the league that are just stubborn and they're going to say, listen, you do what I say and that's it. And if you can't execute it, then go on the bench. But the fact that they were kind of willing to take criticism, and maybe Lane Johnson's kind of filling that Jason Kelce void as far as being like the leader in the locker room and saying, hey, we don't want to just drop back and pass protection every time. We want to be the aggressor and run blocking and setting up the play action, going under center, things like that. So offensive linemen would always much rather prefer to kind of run block and be the aggressor instead of kind of sitting back and waiting for a defensive lineman to attack them in pass protection. So if it's working, then just stick with it and see what happens.
You bring up a great point there because, in the past you would listen to what Jason Kelce's saying after a game because he was going to tell more of the truth, right? And they're still kind of under wraps with the media, and you don't usually get the full-blown, call someone out directly, but you get more so from that. But you mentioned Vic Fangio being the brutally honest on the defense. If you want to know what's going on, just ask Vic Fangio in a presser, and he will tell you who played well, who did not play well, and where this thing's headed. But on the offensive side, Jalen has been more forthcoming, but he's still going to be, more of the put together, not sharing too much out there, not fully criticize or maybe vocalize what the main issues have been. But I think you're right. Lane Johnson has been one of those guys this year because, you think back to the viral comment that he made about a constipated offense. And he's like, look, I'm going to call it like I see it. I'm not going to be like, well, we're getting things together. We're going to figure this thing out. It's like, no, we're not. We are not figuring things out. This offense is way too difficult. It's a constipated offense. There's things that we're not doing that we could, and we have the playmakers here. And it's like, thank you. I think everyone appreciates the brutally honest to not try to sell us something because we're all smart enough to realize and look at it, as we were talking about, hey, I understand that this look is Sirianni's offense and this look is not. And so, for him to actually voice that is a big deal. So for what that's worth, I usually try to go to, if there are Lane Johnson interview clips to, get a better idea of what's going on anyway behind the scenes. So,
and the fact that, was it this game or the previous game where he was kind of asked about how the offense has turned it around, he pointed directly to the ground game. He's like, it starts with the running game. So the fact that he emphasized that and he criticized the offense beforehand, you could tell it's kind of, that's why there's been that switch in terms of the run pass ratio, and Jalen Hurts is kind of staying under that 30 pass attempt mark, and it's made everything kind of work a whole lot better overall.
Yeah, yep, for sure. You did mention also, and a good point from Sirianni being the willing to maybe change things up or do what the front office would prefer. But with Jacksonville and Doug Pederson, the difference is there. Looks like they're tanking. I think you tweeted that out. Looks like they're full on tanking at this point. The trade with the Vikings, trading their left tackle. They're already going to be without Christian Kirk. They're going to be without Brian Thomas, it looks like, for the game this Sunday against the Eagles. We got a comment from Eduardo here, the two-bomb there. Appreciate that. Said, what do y'all think about Walker from Jacksonville? So do you just go ahead and trade with them and say, hey, just go ahead, unload everybody. We'll go ahead and just take another guy off your hands.
I mean, I feel like they can't move on from him or Josh Hines-Allen, if that's his new name, right? Josh Hines-Allen?
Yes,
so,
yep, I believe so.
I feel like those two are their foundational pieces along with Tyson Campbell at cornerback. So as far as the defensive goes, I feel like maybe anybody else besides those three could be available, but I think, and I mentioned Andre Sisco potentially being a target for the Eagles that I thought would make sense. So, but yeah, I feel like even though no matter how bad they're going to be, if they're going to fall to 2-7 or whatever, that there still has to be certain players that kind of need to be off limits and you want to build with moving forward. So those guys I don't think would be available for trade.
That's fair. And understandable. But Elbert here's another name that we've discussed a couple times, but saying Clowney, or who do you think? Jadeveon Clowney's been a name that we've mentioned a few times. So if Carolina is already, pretty much put it out, like Deontay Johnson going to Baltimore, I didn't see that happening. Actually, I think you jinxed it because you said Houston, and then almost immediately,
literally
the
like
news was like,
later.
"Here you go, Baltimore! Congratulations!"
They also, once the whole league learned that Stephon Diggs was gone for the season with a torn ACL, I'm sure all of a sudden everybody was calling about Deontay Johnson because they're like, "Well, we don't really have time to wait because now we know Houston's probably going to try and call for him." So it just felt like a matter of time before somebody traded for him once that Diggs news came out. But I thought Houston would be a little bit more aggressive, but it seemed like Baltimore already had planted the seed there in that regard.
Yeah, you're right. They were anyone in the wide receiver market. As soon as that news, they're like, okay, you know what? We got to move on this really quickly. We're not letting them get in last second and still a wide receiver target. But losing to Cleveland will do something to you.
Yeah, and as far as Clowney goes, I feel like he's another guy kind of similar to Zadarius Smith or even Preston Smith from the Packers, who's been reported as being available in trade talk. So any of those three would be like the kind of the veteran presence that you need besides Brandon Graham, where they're kind of a proven player that's kind of been able to stand up in like a rushing stance and then drop out coverage a little bit, but also play against the run. So I feel like considering that they aren't really using Jalix Hunt yet, and I feel like you don't want Brandon Graham playing as many snaps as he has this season, if you can kind of get somebody to fill that void where they play maybe like 10 to 15 snaps and rotate in, then Jadeveon Clowney could fit that role as well. And I think he does have another year left of his contract. I believe he signed a 2-year, like $18 million or $20 million deal with the Panthers, so which is relatively cheap given what the edge rusher market is. So
for sure,
still been pretty productive regardless of his age. So that wouldn't be too bad of a deal for the Eagles to make either.
Yeah, that one would be. We've had a couple discussions on that one, but certainly one that I would be in favor of, depending on if you can make the compensation work. Damien's here with the 2 saying, talk that talk, Josh. Fly Eagles fly. Yes, we will. I was trying to stay optimistic as well as let people hear, about the Nolan Smith hype and everything on that side. Make sure that some people that were calling him a bust and, others on Twitter that I was sharing, it's a lot quieter these days for the Nolan Smith haters, but, you got to let him hear it. Marcus also saying, Josh, what's really good? Went to Philly. The Flyers won and the Birds won. Heck yeah. Marcus, you just have to stay. You have to stay in Philly until we lose. So that's the way this thing works. The stash is staying. You're staying in Philly. Get a hotel.
That's it. Figure it out. Figure it out.
Yeah. I have to get a different job. Hopefully you can work from home. David here with a 10. Appreciate that. Says, let the haters continue to hate. Let them continue to think that their defense is still bad, the Eagles' defense, and Hurts is still turnover prone. Media narrative does not need to change. They play better when doubted. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, underdog mindset.
I tweeted about it earlier in regards to like the defensive turnaround. I'm just trying to pull it up right here. So last year, Vic Fangio's defense with Miami was awful through the first 4 weeks, similar to how Philadelphia was this year. And then they kind of turned around over the final 13 games. And the Eagles this season, in the first 4 games, they allowed 24 points per game and 365.8 total yards per game, which were 2 of the worst marks in the league. And then since the bye week, they've allowed just 12 points per game. So literally half the amount of points per game.
Jeez.
And 214.3 total yards per game. So in the matter of these last 3 games, they've become one of the best defenses in the NFL. I mean, granted, you could argue about who didn't play or the teams that they played, but you can only play who's on your schedule. So it's promising given how they were defeated by teams that they should have beat last season, and now they're beating the teams that they are supposed to be beating. So you can't really complain in that regard. If they're winning, and it seems like the defense is heading in the right direction too. So it's an exciting time in Philadelphia right now.
Right. Yes. And I'll also say this too. We're everyone's on the same page as it was just Cleveland, it was just New York, but at the same time, it is the NFL. And it does not happen most of the time to win games like the Eagles did back-to-back weeks on the road. I don't care who you're playing. You win by 20-plus points. I mean, I think it's been like since, I believe it was Reuben Frank maybe who posted, like 70-something years since that had happened of the Eagles back-to-back road games, 20-plus points, or winning by 20-plus points. So it doesn't happen. And then you even look, sure, the Giants lost to the Steelers, but the Steelers have a good defense. I think everyone would agree with that. But they still allowed 390 total yards last night. So it's like, come on, you can't have it both ways. Yes, the Giants still only scored 18, but we held them to 3. I know there's some differences there, and we could make all sorts of excuses and everything else, but ultimately it's like, look, defense showed up. You take care of whoever you're playing. It doesn't matter. It's the NFL. You can get beat by any team. Who had the Ravens getting beat by the Browns? Not very many people. I mean, it's not like we're talking about the Jets here. Like the Ravens were juggernauts. They were literally juggernauts. So
the Bengals got into a shootout with the Ravens as well. So I mean,
exactly.
You can always go back and say that like this team sucks, but then if you look back and say, oh, they beat the Giants, they would have beat the Commanders if they had a healthy kicker. So like you can go back and argue about all these different kinds of things. So it's just like you beat who's on your schedule. You can only play who's on your schedule, and there's going to be people that complain regardless. But the Eagles just have to kind of. Nick Sirianni said in the clip that came out in the most recent, like unscripted, where it's just like just keep your head down and keep working. Like now you're gonna be praised. It doesn't matter. Before you were criticized, it doesn't matter. Just keep your head down and work. And that's really all the Eagles have to do moving forward.
Definitely appreciate that mindset. Fanny with a 5 saying, "Hey Josh and Ant-Man," which is, by the way, your official, whether you want it to or not, like your nickname based on the chat and everything else is Ant-Man.
Listen,
so
I'm a big Anthony Edwards guy, so that's good. I'll take his nickname as well. The superhero is kind of underwhelming, but could be better. But a phenomenal NBA player with a lot of swagger and character, fair. So I'll take it.
It could be worse. Yes, that's good. Well, Fanny says here. Joe Burrow said in his interview, "We knew their front row was going to be disruptive." So you got to love that, the fact that he was going into it already, knowing that the pass rush is something to be feared. And, we talk about what it was or was not last year. So to have a guy like Joe Burrow, which entering the game, I think, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, second or third in passer rating for the season. So there's a lot of reason to think, okay, this is a challenge. This will be difficult. Can you get to Burrow? Can you have him, or throw him off? And they did. They threw some creative things at him. But I think maybe one of the biggest takeaways from it, or at least the positives there, is like, it's not like you just started out from the first series and, the game was over. Like, Joe Burrow carved up your defense for just about 2 drives, like certainly a drive and a half that eventually got stalled, fortunately, and some good plays made. But you give up a 3rd and 22, you give up a 3rd and 14 or something like that, 2 really long third downs. You allow them 7 straight third down conversions, and just continue to let them march down the field. Kudos to the defense for showing the resolve, the resiliency, and then ultimately end up, later in the game as it went, only 7 points after those first 2 drives allowed.
Yeah, well, I talked about it. I tweeted it like after the first drive or 2. I was like, if the Eagles can consistently keep this team in 3rd and 6 or longer territory, I feel like they'll be in great shape moving forward. And then sure enough, throughout the game, they ended up keeping them in those obvious passing situations, and they fed off of it, and they did really well. So, and also I feel like if you go back and watch the game, it felt like the Eagles should have had like 5+ sacks, but it's just like Joe Burrow just makes these little maneuvers in the pocket where he just like perfectly times a step up or an escape towards the sideline. It was just like, it was frustrating to watch, but at the same time, you have to realize against a majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL, that's going to be a sack. So, yeah, like Joe Burrow's great. He made great plays, but moving forward, it feels like the pass rush is in a much better place than it was the first couple weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, you're right. It was kind of irritating whenever he was either maneuvering away from some guys. Like there's one with Bryce Huff who seemed like, man, he could get there, and then he dodges one. There's another one, I think, that Josh Sweat is really close to making the sack, and he's able to avoid it. And then even barely outrunning Zack Baun to convert for a 3rd down. You're like, man, Baun's faster, but Burrow was just fast enough to convert on the 3rd down. You're like, can't quite get off the field. But, seems to be.
Those 3rd downs were something to watch, the first 2 drives. So it's just like 3rd and 22.
Uh-oh. We might have lost connection here.
Oh.
Wait, maybe you're back. I heard the 3rd, and then we got to freeze for a second. Maybe. Nope. I think the connection has lost Anthony. He might come back. It was the 3rd down. That's what got him. Got him off the field on a 3rd down. Let's see. He's coming back. We'll see if we can get this connection a little better. There we go.
Am I good now?
I think should be better. Okay.
I don't know what happened. I started talking about the 3rd downs, and both of our computers didn't want to hear it.
It's a 3rd down. Nope. Done talking about the 3rd down.
But I was just saying that it felt like Mike Gesicki was just making every catch and like every conversion. So yeah, that was frustrating to watch, but eventually kind of caught up with them, and they weren't able to keep doing it. So
yeah, definitely with plays being made all around, and the punch out, as we said, with Zack Baun, everything there. Philly Don with a 2 saying, I want to see Hurts under center a lot more. I mean, I think everybody would agree with that. I mean, you look at this offense with the playmakers you have, Saquon, Barkley, we talked about all the efficiency and everything else, but when you are under center, you're able to use play action, you're able to throw off the defense, they're expecting a run of sorts, and it's just a lot more confusing. You still have your RPO, you still have, options in the gun, you still have a lot of snaps where they're going to run from the gun, that's fine. But when we have differences and changes in formation, it just naturally makes life a little bit more difficult. Whereas, opposed to last season, it was like every single time. We say, hey, 97% of the time, you can just guarantee yourself before they even walk out there, the Eagles will be in gun. Not a doubt. They will be in gun. So for sure, we're all of that mindset. Also, Philly Don saying this line is more suited for the run game and play action, the playing out of the shotgun every down, than playing out of the shotgun every down. Reason sacks are down the last couple games. Could be another thing, too.
Especially with Jordan Mailata being out, I feel like if Fred Johnson is in there, it kind of helps to kind of give help on his side with either 12 personnel or just doing, like you said, those under center snaps where it gives them a little bit more time to establish themselves in pass protection if you're running out of fake or things like that. So it seems like if Jalen Hurts is comfortable with it, it seems like it needs to be a more like an included part of the offense. I mean, you're not going to go 100% of the time under the center, but because then you kind of lose Jalen Hurts' ability to kind of keep the ball and run, which he looked good doing against the Bengals. So a good mix of both is where you can keep the defense honest is kind of the good point where they need to be at.
Yep. Last one here from Tyler. Appreciate the 5. Says, do you think Travon Walker edge, which we kind of already went on to, but got the other question here, was getting to him. But do you think Travon Walker edge from Jags is available? If so, what do you think it'll take to acquire them? Which we kind of already talked. Probably not. That's just little.
I mean, especially the year he's having this year, I feel like he's looked really promising. So if he is available, then I would be surprised. But if he is, then I think it would probably take a similar package to what it would take to get a Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, because it would probably be a future first-round pick or multiple second-round picks, something like that in that regard.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I want to sign up for that too. I mean, especially because if your defensive coordinator went out there as brutally honest as he is, and he was like, yeah, our pass rush sucks. Like, we do not have a pass. Then maybe as the GM, I'd be like, okay, we gotta try to shake things up here. But he's confident in it, and we've seen that Nolan Smith and others are having more production. They're getting pressures and winning their matchups so far. Yes, it'll be more difficult against better pass protection, but still, like, you take advantage of who you're playing every single week. And on that note, as we wrap up here, getting into a little bit of talk. I know we're only sitting here on a Tuesday night, obviously, so a little ways to go. But the Jaguars game, as we mentioned, you don't want to overlook someone. You don't want to have a trap game of sorts or just kind of overlooking your opponent because of how poor they've played or the fact that they are probably tanking and they're getting rid of their left tackle, shipping him off to Minnesota. The Jaguars, like, realistically, is there, like, I guess first off to start, what do you expect from this game on Sunday from the Jags?
I expect the Eagles to have another convincing win because, I mean, the Jaguars are just not very good. I mean, their defense allows the second most passing yards per game in the NFL, the fourth most total yards per game in the NFL, and they're tied for the third most points allowed per game in the NFL. So, I mean, all season long, they've just not been good. Granted, they did get back their best cornerback, Tyson Campbell, last week, and he's kind of been shut down. He's only allowed 2 catches for 19 yards. So if they can kind of keep him on A.J. Brown, maybe somebody can shut down A.J. Brown, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen this season. He's playing out of his mind. So, yeah. But it does seem like the Eagles can take advantage of their struggling defense because even though I mentioned Andre Sisco as kind of a trade target, he's not very good in coverage, and neither are any of their other three. Their safety trio of Antonio Johnson, Darnell Savage, and Andre Sisco, they've all struggled in coverage. The best passer rating that either of those players has allowed is 109.4. So, I mean, you could attack this team deep. You could attack them with tight ends.
Not great.
Yeah, they can just kind of have their way in that regard. And so I expect another kind of Jalen Hurts masterclass. Maybe we're getting too comfortable with how well the offense has played in recent weeks, but I feel like this is the perfect matchup to kind of build on that and just keep dominating a defense that they should play well against.
7.5 is what the spread currently is. So Eagles favored by 7.5. It feels like they should cover that one. I agree with you. I think that they should be able to take advantage. This Jacksonville team is not that great, especially you take away Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas and who knows who else they'll trade by the time we get to that game. But it's also a Kelly Green week. So
I was literally thinking that, like, in my next response. Yep, I was going to say. Because I was going to say, listen, you're playing at home. And lately at home, they've been kind of shaky. They have, like, those rough starts. So, like, you have to factor that in. But then Kelly Green kind of voids all of that. So it seems like it should be a convincing win. So
it's the trump card. I mean, you just automatically say, hey, what do you need? If you need a win, you just go ahead and put the Kelly Green jerseys on, and that's what's going to do it. And Shady, unfortunately, it's not a Sunday Night Football game because it was going to be, and then it got flexed. But it's going to be the Shady induction, I believe, right? They're honoring Shady for that one.
I believe so.
Halftime.
Yeah.
So unless they change, I don't think they did, but I know it was supposed to be Sunday Night Football. I assume it'll still take place. So you got that and the Kelly Green. Yeah, they're not losing. I can't see how they will. But is there
the only?
I was going to go into
the only way.
Is there any way
that they do lose is if they let kind of like the tank Bigsby kind of go off, because he's been really explosive filling in for Travis Etienne in the backfield. And if they kind of let him go off and for some reason the run defense struggles again, they've been phenomenal in recent weeks, but if they kind of let them go crazy where they can just kind of dominate the time possession, limit the Eagles offense in terms of how many possessions they have. And whereas now if the Eagles go 3 and out, now they're struggling to kind of catch up because now the Jaguars had the ball for 10 or 11 minutes of the game. So it's just like, that can be, I feel like, the only reason that they would lose. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has been playing relatively well given the lack of, like, his offensive line has kind of been up and down, and then he's had a lot of drop passes this season as well, but he's getting rid of the ball really quickly. But then again, is he going to be able to get rid of the ball quickly without 2 or 3 of his top receivers? So it seems like the only way that Jacksonville can win is if they can kind of force some turnovers and then rely on the running game, but I really don't see it happening in Philadelphia.
Yeah, like you said, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence, I'm with you on that. If especially if they get behind, it's like, okay, you got to start changing things up, and then maybe the pass rush is able to get home even more, and this whole thing snowballs. Like the Eagles team, the makeup of it, they're definitely much better momentum. But we've said this for weeks. They're built to play from ahead. Like you get the lead. Yeah. Your defense is built to have a lead, try to protect a lead, play a little bit more aggressive, get sacks, pass rush, all of that, and then run the football becomes even more dominant at that point. So Theo Subs with the 2 said pass rush is strong, just need to finish tackles. Some of it, yeah. I mean, from the Joe Burrow comment as well, but it's been fairly. So I think that are they first since the bye week in sacks? I think I saw that stat, or they're like really close. They're like top 3 in the league for sure. I think they might be first since the bye week.
I know their missed tackles has dropped significantly too. So I feel like since that bye week, I don't know what that incident that Kobe Dean was talking about that you referenced in one of your videos, or like whatever happened during that bye week, they need to bottle it up and just save it for future seasons during a bye week and just use that, because whatever it did, it flipped the switch and the team looks entirely different since then.
Whatever it is, just replay the incident. Have somebody else come in. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories as we talked about. Like was it Devin White because he was released very soon around that time? Maybe he was upset and that was the incident. Other people were saying no, it was CJ with Slay's comment, and so they went. And again, it's all speculation. Who knows? But whatever it was, it did flip the switch, and we started to see much better play. So. Anyway, appreciate you coming on. It's been a while, but had to make this happen. Obviously, schedules and things like that coming up for this weekend, so maybe not able to make it happen otherwise. But to wrap up here, it only feels appropriate. I know it's very early, but do you have any official score prediction? Anything crazy out there? I know you said Eagles should, but what are you officially going with on a Tuesday before a Sunday game?
So I'll go with another convincing Eagles win. I was wrong last week, so maybe I should just pick against the Eagles and go with the Jaguars.
I mean, again,
Jaguars upset win, because apparently that works for whenever I pick against the Eagles. But unfortunately, maybe for the Eagles' sake, I'm going to say that the Eagles are going to win. I'll say 34-13, a good, comfortable win where they just dominate once again and kind of steamroll their way to victory.
Okay, I love it. Absolutely love it. I'm going to go 30-14. I'm going to pretty close in that range, but I'm going to say 30-14. You have maybe a couple Jake Elliott field goals, couple touchdowns, given up, but not a massive day there. Nothing near as close as, or at least not the 14-0 the last time Jacksonville was in Philly. Like they got up 14-0 and then ended up finally getting it into gear,
waking up.
Yeah. The other question that I should end with is I'm seeing some of the other comments as well for score prediction. K-Dude's got 27-9, LA Kid 37-10, Devin with 37-17, 27-13 for Remo, 34-13, 31-13, 34-10, 31-13. Feels like there are a lot of people about in that same range. So that makes sense.
There's something weird about when the Jaguars come to Philadelphia, though, because I remember like years back, the Allen Hurns game where he like went off against the Eagles. I forget what year it was. But like I think the Eagles ended up winning because they were like down big at halftime and then they turned it around. So maybe, hopefully they don't go down big again because
we don't need that.
We don't want to see this team playing from behind, but
nope.
Hopefully a nice, comfortable win where the Eagles can kind of just roll into the next week, get ready for the Cowboys and the Commanders in 2 big divisional matchups. But yeah, hopefully it's a nice, convincing win.
You're right, because we've had a couple weeks now where it's very strange. It's odd to get used to this, but the lack of the blood pressure, the anxiety, the difficulty of breathing, late in games, it's like, hey man, we got this thing covered. This is just a nice, easy cakewalk to finish and taking care of business. It should hopefully be the same thing. But the other question to this is, do the Eagles finally score in the first quarter? Do they finally break that streak? It's ridiculous here that week 9, and they have still not done that. But we're 5-2, so like maybe it doesn't matter. But like, is this finally the week? Your prediction?
I mean, it's unfair because last week they technically scored in their first possession.
It's true, but
the Bengals had the ball for so damn long that they
still have not.
When I saw all those graphics popping up, I was like, "That's not fair." But then again, it's true technically.
Yes, yes.
But yes, I think, especially if the Eagles lose the coin toss, because then maybe they'll get the ball first, and that gives them kind of a better chance. Maybe they'll have like 2 possessions in the first quarter instead of just 1. But yeah, I think this will be finally the week that they get that monkey off their back and they score in the first quarter for the first time officially. So. Okay. That'll be nice.
I'm agreeing also. I'm predicting that they do score first. They get on the board. It's a touchdown. I'm going to say.
Here we go. Getting spicy.
I'm gonna go with. This is not going to be like an outlier prediction. I'm just going to go with. I'm going to go with a Saquon touchdown. Okay, he can't go multiple games in a row without scoring, right? Like because he basically had it, but then Jalen kind of vultured the brotherly shove touchdown. He should have had it. So.
He had Saquon Barkley spike the ball after one of those. He probably
cool
felt bad.
Yes.
Like he treated him like an offensive lineman. He's like, "Here, you spike this."
Oh, totally. Yes, yeah. It's going to be all throughout the year, the entire season. But
the one thing about the Jaguars defense that's been surprising all season is that their run defense is actually relatively good. So maybe they kind of force the Eagles to kind of air out the ball, which might play into their hands pretty well because the Eagles have kind of relied on the ground game, but. I think regardless, I think the Eagles win pretty convincingly. Maybe we'll see a Ben Van Sumeren carry or reception for the first time ever. That would be kind of fun.
That would be.
I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it would be fun to see. But I want Ben Van Sumeren on the field at all times. That guy is just fun to watch because he gets so even if he blocks a guy that's like 5 yards away from the actual action, he's still celebrating and loving every second of it. So it's just
the physicality. Yeah, you can tell he doesn't care who it is. But I know exactly what you're talking about. You see some of the footage of him, and you're like, I appreciate the fact that you just lit that dude up, but like, it had no impact at all on the play. Like, some helpless nickel is getting just obliterated there on the side, and they're like, bro, what are you doing? Like, I'm not going to tackle Saquon. I'm so far away from the play, but you know what? Hey, more power to him. Keep doing it.
He's like a heat-seeking missile. He just sees his target.
He is.
Locks on. That's it. If it's going to have an impact or not, it doesn't matter. He's hitting that guy.
Oh, yeah. You got to love it. That's what makes it fun. But like I say, it's so much more fun when the Eagles are playing this way. We see the vibes of the team. Lots more hype. We're not totally going out there. I'm not even saying it. We have seen some, comments of other people like, oh, Super Bowl and everything. But still, like, we're building. This thing's building. So reason to be optimistic. Appreciate you coming on again as always, though. And for people hanging on in the chat, if you have not, make sure to follow Mr. DeBona himself. That is at DeBona NFL. Yes, Eagles reporter and NFL analyst, dual roles there. Anything else? Any last takeaways, predictions, expectations, whether trade deadline and or Eagles, Jags, anything you want to leave us with?
No predictions. I just think, like I said, watch out for one of those like marginal depth additions at the trade deadline. I don't think it's going to be anything too big, but I threw names out there, but I'll throw them out there again. Zadarius Smith. I guess you could throw Jadeveon Clowney in there too. Greg Dulcich, Kendrick Bourne, Divine Diablo from the Raiders, Andre Sisco. Those are all guys that kind of make sense in that regard in terms of the positions they play and what they would likely cost in a trade as well. So those are names I'm looking at. And then kind of a personal shout out for Philly Sports Network. I'll be doing my second Eagles mailbag. So I'll be doing that actually right after I get off this. So if anybody wants to go send me a question on Twitter, you can do that now before I start writing, and I'll try to answer it in the mailbag as well. So
there you go. Sweet. Go ahead and do that. Actually, let me, just so I'll save some people some time real quick before we
should be one of my more recent tweets. I think I've shared it again.
Okay. Yes. Yep. I'm going to post this in the comments section just in case you're wanting to throw it out there because as always, Anthony does fantastic work, but make sure to get those.
I try.
Get those in. Let's see. Here's the link here. Got it. There we go.
I appreciate it. And anything that I don't get to in the article, I'll try and just answer straight up on Twitter as well. So
sweet.
I will do my best.
There you go. There's the mailbag. So yeah, go ahead, send out the questions to Anthony, and he'll get those there. Damon's with the last minute super chat here with the 2, said we're going to put up a 40 burger on him, 40-13. I wouldn't mind seeing that for the Jags either. So let's just.
Well, that's what it would have been against the Cincinnati if Will Shipley's touchdown wouldn't have been called back. So maybe it could happen again.
We need to see the Rook get the official score. He deserves it.
A Will Shipley redemption story is what I need to see. So.
Yes, absolutely. Well, cool, man. We appreciate you hopping on, as always. A blast. And everybody else hanging out in the chat, appreciate you guys. Y'all make this possible. Absolutely awesome. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already. Going to be giving away tickets to that Commanders game that we'll be at. So make sure to sub to the show. And also have a Saquon Barkley signed Kelly Green helmet, which I didn't plan this beforehand, but I said 80,000 subscribers, and it looks like it's on pace to hit right about during the first Kelly Green game. So yeah, I don't know. Some things just work out like that. But some random subscriber will get a signed Saquon Barkley Kelly Green helmet. So there you go.
I'll be sure to get my burner accounts ready for that.
I'm kidding. I'm sure that I'm going to lose. Best of luck to you on that one. As people be like, man, this one account continues to win these things. But no. Well, appreciate it, guys. Until next time, we'll have the Friday night hangout as well. So we'll see you there, as well as other videos to come. But as always, you know what it is. Go Birds.